in a wide open lot on the edge of the city, where dusty roads run through wild grass and rows of short trees. An old shipping container sits quietly like something forgotten by time. There are no cranes lifting cargo anymore, no trucks moving in and out of the port, and no workers rushing between giant steel boxes. This container seems to have been left here for many years, long enough for dust, rust, and the marks of time to cover its entire surface. The paint that once covered the container in a deep blue color has faded and peeled away in large patches. Brown and red rust spreads across the metal, like small maps drawn by time itself. The corners of the container have been worn down slowly by years of sun, rain, and wind. The heavy metal doors are stiff and difficult to open after sitting untouched for so long. For many people, this container is nothing more than an old piece of scrap metal, but sometimes the most forgotten objects hold the greatest potential. Standing in front of this container, we do not see scrap metal. We see possibility, a structure that can be transformed, a strong steel frame that can become a home. The idea begins with a simple thought. Turn this abandoned container into a modern tiny house. Not just a temporary shelter, but a real living space. A place with light, wood, plants, and warmth. When the container doors are opened for the first time in years, a cloud of dust rises into the air. The inside is completely dark, with only thin rays of light entering through tiny gaps. The interior is long and narrow, surrounded by cold steel walls. The floor is covered in dust and small pieces of wood left from past shipments. The air smells of old metal and dampness. Looking at this scene, many people might believe it would be almost impossible to turn it into a beautiful home. But projects like this often begin in places that look exactly like this. The first step is always cleaning. Everything inside the container must be removed. Dust, old wood fragments, small pieces of metal, and anything left behind must be taken out. After hours of cleaning, the inside space becomes completely empty. Only then can we see the true structure of the container. Thick steel walls, strong metal framing, a long space measuring nearly 12 meters. This is the foundation of the future home. After cleaning, the next step is rust treatment. Areas damaged by corrosion must be ground down using metal tools. The rust is removed to reveal the steel surface underneath. Then a protective anti-rust coating is applied to the entire container. This layer protects the metal and prepares it for the next stage of transformation. Once the paint dries, the container begins to look different. It no longer resembles abandoned scrap metal. It looks like a structure waiting to become something new. The next step is crucial: cutting windows. Lines are carefully marked on the container walls. Metal cutting tools begin to work, sending sparks flying into the air. Sections of steel are removed to create large window openings. When the first metal panel falls away, sunlight enters the container for the first time. That moment feels like a turning point. The dark interior suddenly becomes brighter. Sunlight reflects off the steel walls and spreads across the space. And from that moment forward, the old container begins its journey toward becoming a home, as natural light begins to enter the container through the newly cut windows. The entire interior space changes dramatically. What once felt dark and cold suddenly becomes brighter and more welcoming. Sunlight shines onto the steel walls, creating long reflections that spread across the interior. This is the moment when the vision of the future home becomes much clearer. The container space is long and narrow, but that shape actually becomes an advantage. With thoughtful design, it can be transformed into a compact yet fully functional tiny house. After the windows are completed, the next step is insulation. Since shipping containers are made entirely of steel, the interior would become extremely hot during the day and very cold at night without proper insulation. Insulation panels are installed along the interior walls. Every gap between the metal frames is filled to create a thermal barrier. After the insulation is placed, wooden wall panels are installed on top. As the first wooden boards are mounted, the atmosphere inside the container begins to feel warmer. The cold metal surfaces slowly disappear behind the light wooden walls. At the same time, the electrical system is installed. Thin wires run along the walls before the final panels are closed. Locations for lights, power outlets, and switches are carefully planned. The goal is to ensure that the tiny house is not only beautiful, but also practical. Once the walls and electrical systems are completed, the next stage is flooring. Although the original steel floor of the container remains strong, a wooden floor is installed on top to create a more comfortable living environment. Wooden planks are placed along the entire length of the container. When sunlight enters through the windows, the wooden surface reflects light gently and creates a peaceful atmosphere. At this stage, the interior no longer resembles a shipping container. It begins to feel like a real room. After completing the structural elements, the focus shifts to interior design. At one end of the container, a small wooden bed is placed against the wall. The bed is simple but perfectly sized for the space. A mattress, pillows, and soft blankets transform this corner into a comfortable resting area. Just above the bed, a large window allows natural light to enter. From this spot, one can lie down and look at the sky outside. In the middle section of the container, a small wooden table is placed near the window. Two simple chairs sit across from each other. This space can be used for meals, reading, or working. On the opposite side, a compact kitchen area is installed. A small sink is built into the countertop, along with a clean and simple cooking space. Above the counter, wooden shelves hold dishes and other kitchen items. Everything is designed with simplicity and efficiency in mind. Because the space is limited, every detail must be arranged carefully. Small lights are installed along the ceiling of the container. When they are turned on at night, the soft yellow glow spreads throughout the interior. The light reflects gently on the wooden surfaces, creating a warm and cozy atmosphere. Small plants are placed near the windows to bring nature inside. The green leaves create a beautiful contrast with the wood and metal elements. At this point, stepping inside the container feels completely different. It is no longer a shipping container. It has become a home, a small home, but one filled with inspiration. When the final interior details are completed, the old container that once sat quietly in the empty lot has completely transformed. The rough, rusted metal and the cold industrial feeling are gone. In their place is a small but welcoming living space where light, wood, and simple design come together to create a real home. Stepping inside now feels entirely different. The wooden floor feels warm and smooth underfoot. Natural light flows through the large windows and reflects softly on the bright wooden surfaces. The wooden walls soften the atmosphere, replacing the cold steel frame that once defined the interior. At the far end of the container, the small bed becomes a perfect resting corner. It does not need to be large. It only needs enough space to lie down. Look up through the nearby window and watch the sky. Soft pillows and a simple blanket create a level of comfort that sometimes even large rooms fail to provide. In the middle of the container, the small wooden table beside the window becomes the center of the living space. Here, someone can sit with a cup of coffee in the morning, read a book in the afternoon, or simply sit quietly while looking out at the open field in the distance. The wind moves through the grass, sunlight shifts throughout the day, and the small container window becomes a living frame for nature outside. The kitchen area is minimal but practical. A small sink, a countertop, and a few wooden shelves above provide enough space to prepare simple meals. The space is small, but everything has its place. This sense of organization makes the home feel comfortable rather than cramped. As the afternoon slowly turns into evening, the light outside begins to change. Warm golden sunlight enters through the windows and spreads across the tiny house. The final rays of sunlight reflect on the wooden floor and create a peaceful, glowing atmosphere. It is in this moment that the transformation becomes clear. The container that once transported cargo across oceans has now become a home. Not a large mansion, not a luxury estate, but a true living space. When night falls, the small lights inside the container are turned on. Their warm glow shines gently through the windows, making the tiny house look like a lantern glowing softly in the quiet landscape. From a distance, it is hard to imagine that this place was once just an abandoned shipping container. Now it looks like a small house resting peacefully in nature. A place to rest, a place to think, a place to step away from the noise of modern life. This project is not only about transforming an old container. It is also a reminder that some of the most beautiful things begin with objects that others have forgotten. All around us there are old things that people pass by without noticing. But with a different perspective, we can see their potential. A container, an old bus, an abandoned building, each one can become something new with enough creativity. Sitting inside this container home at night, looking out at the stars and listening to the quiet sounds of nature, creates a feeling that is difficult to describe. It is not luxury, it is not expensive comfort, it is peace. And perhaps that is what many people are truly searching for. A small space that feels warm, a simple place filled with meaning, a home created from something that once seemed worthless. The old container in the empty lot is no longer forgotten. It has become a home, a small home surrounded by the vast beauty of nature.